A show created by the fans, for the fans. We are your home for Ohio State football coverage all year long. The Scarlet and Gray Podcast, a Network 216 production. Live weekdays on the Network 216 YouTube channel. Send us all your questions and comments on Twitter at VSG_podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Tyler Johnson, Jordan Dalton, and Nick Leisure.
Good evening, Buckeye Nation, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Scarlet and Gray Podcast. I am Tyler Johnson, as always, joined by the boys, Nick Leisure, Jordan Dalton. Gentlemen, happy Tuesday night once again. How are you guys doing this evening?
Pretty well.
Yeah, doing good. Doing good. Sad weekend without Buckeye football, but happy to have it back in action this weekend.
Same here.
Early bye week for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's just weird because Marshall had a bye week as well. So why?
Oh, great.
We,
So the Thundering Herd's going to come into Columbus fresh.
apparently,
Big noon kickoff in town too. Ugh.
dude, it's just a weird. I don't know. It was just weird this bye week. But anyway, that's completely fine. But you kind of hit it already. Big noon kickoff. There is a bit of a recap on just some freshmen. We're gonna just talk about what we saw this weekend from around the country, and then of course make our picks for the week. So a little bit of a short show, but still plenty to talk about. If you guys would just take a second, drop a like on tonight's stream. Again, that really helps the channel grow, and also subscribe if you're brand new to the channel as well. Completely free to like a video, completely free to subscribe, so you don't miss any Ohio State football content. So, guys, I figured this would be a good time, kind of like bye week, kind of check in to see on how some of the freshmen are doing so far this year. So far, believe me, we're going to talk plenty of Jeremiah Smith, I'm sure. But I kind of want to start off with a guy that highly talented recruit. He isn't going to probably get a ton of reps this year, but in garbage time, not only does he have one solo tackle, he probably should have had I feel like he should have been credited with a sack, but for whatever reason, he wasn't. I'm talking about Edric Houston. Again, 5-star recruit. What do you guys like what you've seen out of him so far? Again, he's probably not going to get many reps, but Ryan Day, Jim Knowles have really talked about the fact that he is making an impact as a freshman. And again, the biggest thing for him is just going to be hard to get on the field with all the talent that's in front of him this year.
I mean, I guess it's just huge that we got him in Columbus in the first place. You know, I know there for a while we didn't know if Larry Johnson was going to lock him up, and then we finally get word that we locked him down, and that's a big deal coming to Columbus. But like you said, I mean, with all the talent we got on the field with Jack Sawyer and JTT, it's kind of going to be difficult at that defensive end spot since both those guys came back, with a vengeance this year. But I mean, obviously, getting him in these first three non-conference games is going to be a big deal. And seeing him make kind of an impact early on is really promising. But I mean, you can see just by the way he plays that he's going to be a stud moving forward. But I mean, like you said, with these freshmen that are getting limited snaps, it's going to be hard to kind of see what they can really bring to the table so early.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm just impressed by his size. He's a big freshman. And I know it's garbage time, and I know that he's just getting out there because we're playing lesser opponents. But with the way the schedule is working out this year, there's a chance he blows his red shirt if we have an injury or something, and they need him as a rotation piece on that D line. So just getting him out there right now and seeing that he can make an impact and do the things that the coaches are asking is huge, because who knows, by the time the playoffs roll around, he might be a mainstay down there on the front.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, you kind of hit on it. We're lucky that he's even in Columbus. It took Ryan Day calling him very shortly before he was announcing his commitment.
It was like a midnight thing, right? Like came down.
No, not even that, dude. He was supposed to announce his commitment in the afternoon. There was a lot of smoke in the morning because I remember all the different articles that were coming out on how Edric Houston was going to switch to Alabama. There were multiple crystal balls coming in. He was going to switch to Alabama. And apparently that was still the case. And then mid-afternoon, Ohio State was able to close the deal because supposedly Ryan Day called him at that point, and just got it over the line there. So huge job by Ryan Day in order to secure him because, again, I think he's going to end up being the next great Buckeye defensive end that we have. But the next guy I want to go to, Jalen McClain. Now, this is a guy that we saw. He had a touchdown in the spring game. Again, it's a spring game. But as a freshman, he's already has 2 solo tackles. To me, I think this is a guy that is going to end up making a little bit more of an impact. Now, in safeties, you have Lathan Ransom, you have Caleb Downs. So, like, you have a lot of talent at the safety position. And even if, like, Sonny Styles had to go back there for whatever reason he could. But I have to admit, man, I'm really liking these young safeties. Jalen McClain has really stuck out to me so far, especially as a freshman. I didn't think he would be getting really much time at all, but he has been a pleasant surprise so far this year.
Yeah, that secondary is just so deep, and that's just another piece that we add. And I know we're going to be losing Lathan Ransom next year and Josh Proctor. And so it's going to be pretty much Caleb Downs and McClain next year is what it's looking like back there. The more that we can get these guys playing time now, the better off we're going to be later in the season and next season for sure.
I mean, yeah, dude, top recruit, 4-star guy. I think On3 had him listed as like the top 3, like top 5 player in New Jersey. So it's like he's definitely got some talent to bring to the table. Big kid too. I mean, listed at 192, 6 foot 192. So it's always nice when you can have some of the bigger safeties out there because then not only are they going to be effective in the pass game, but in the run game as well. Because I know Jim Knowles, he likes to make sure his guys like to be physical at the point of attack. So, I'm excited. Like you said, he scored a touchdown in the spring game, so he's showing some flash early on in his career, and he's just kind of going to keep building on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going on to the next one here, we're going to do a couple more. So, we haven't seen a lot of them, of course, but when one of your first long passes is a touchdown in your Ohio State career at quarterback, the expectations are going to be through the roof for you. I'm talking about Julian Sayin. Coming in as the top quarterback in the country, more than likely is not going to see any time unless just something crazy happens. But Julian Sayin for you guys, I mean, the hype has not quieted down by any means. I know it's early, but do you think we're looking at the future starting quarterback for the Buckeyes, or is there still a long way to go before that is decided?
I mean, you got Tavian St. Clair coming in next year too. So it's like you're going to definitely have some comp. But, I mean, Julian's definitely going to be I think he's going to be the front runner, obviously, going into next season. And who knows, dude? Crazy things could happen, and he might have to play a lot more this year than we expected him to. You never know. And especially with how long the season is, I'm sure Ryan Day wants to have at least 3 guys. So that being Will Howard, Devin Brown, and Julian Sayin, probably all really familiar with everything that needs to happen in the offense. So I'm sure as the season goes, a couple of those guys like Keenholz and Nolan, they might not be getting as many reps, in practice just because Day probably clearly has his top 3 guys in the room. So, but yeah, like you said, I mean, when one of your first 2 passes is a touchdown, it's pretty exciting just to add more fuel to the hype, I guess. So I think his future is going to be bright as long as he stays a Buckeye.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me of the point they had made in the offseason with the Missouri game when Kyle McCord transferred, Devin Brown went down, Keenholz was thrust in there and wasn't prepared. And they took the coaches took the blame on themselves for not preparing him as a number 1 quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I feel like right now that, like you said, Nick, they have 3 guys that they're prepping as number 1 quarterbacks. They want those guys they want them to be able to run with the ones and be able to not skip a beat on offense. They don't have to change anything if one of those guys comes in. And I think Julian Sayin is taking those 1 reps as much as they can get with distributing between, Howard and Brown. But I think his future's bright. It's almost a very similar situation to Arch Manning in Texas and how they weren't rushed to get him on the field. He's able to, get familiar with the system, sit on the bench, get those reps, those mental reps, and then we might see it where he comes in and we're just shocked at how prepared he is. And with the talent, the talent is there. We see it just from that one touchdown pass, just like the way he throws the football it's unmatched in college football, honestly. And so I'm excited. I think he's going to end up being the starter next year. And yeah.
A good question to think about here, and I'm not saying this is the case, but it would be interesting if we don't want this to happen. But let's say Will Howard has to miss 3 or 4 games due to injury or something like that. Do you guys think that they roll Devin Brown out there, or do you think they are trying to get Julian Sayin ready? Because if Julian Sayin is ready, he would be the guy. If it's a 1-game absence, you go Devin Brown. If it's a multi-game absence, is it Julian Sayin? I saw someone propose that question. I want to know what your guys' thoughts were on that, because I think that is interesting, especially with the reports that we were getting out of basically out of camp, is that Julian Sayin was contending for that backup job. If it was a long break for Will Howard before he could play again, would they roll Julian Sayin out there?
I think it's a dumb answer, but I think it's the most logical. Is they would put Brown out there for the first game and see how he plays, and then they'll kind of go from there, because I mean Brown's kind of earned his stripes in that offense and on that team, and I don't think they're ready to rush Julian out there. And if Brown is capable and they can put him out there and not risk Julian being overexposed in his first career start, I think that's what they would do. But like I said, if Brown goes out there, lays an egg, then I think you wouldn't see a long wait to get Julian on the field.
Yeah, I kind of read my mind. I was thinking like multi-game, they'd see. I was even going as far as if Devin Brown plays bad in the first half of the game, they might roll Sayin out in the second.
It all comes down to the confidence with the coach.
Sure, yeah.
If they feel like Julian, I think the general consensus among Buckeye fans and everyone involved with the program is Julian has the highest upside in that quarterback room right now.
Yeah.
And I think that rushing him on the field, putting him in a bad situation, I don't think him with the ones is a bad situation at all. I'm just saying, like, putting too much pressure on him early might not be the best for his long-term career. But I mean, you've seen the talent. If they feel comfortable with how he runs the offense and how familiar he is with it, I don't think they're going to wait to put him on the field.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
He has so many weapons on offense. It's just
exactly.
It's easy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It would be easy. It's not
he doesn't have to be Superman. He just needs to be your point guard.
Yeah, definitely not like a Bryce Young, Carolina Panthers situation where you don't have a line, you don't have receivers. It's kind of a different situation at Ohio State for sure.
Yeah. And again, really hope we don't get to that point, but it is just something that is kind of in the back of the mind, just given how they feel about Julian Sayin. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Got 2 more, and then we'll give our picks for the week here. James Peoples, guys, true freshman running back. He has 2 less carries than Travion Henderson, 6 less than Quishon Junkins. Obviously, that's in mop-up duty, but 16 carries, 81 yards, 5.1 yards per carry, already 2 touchdowns. He would not be in this position, most likely, if Dalen Hayden did not transfer from Ohio State. James Peoples, has he surprised you guys so far? I know that there was a lot of hype coming in about him, and there are a lot of people that think, based off the way he's built, the way he runs, that he could be, and this is high praise, I mean, very high praise, the second coming of J.K. Dobbins.
I mean, I've been impressed. I mean, and again, he's making the most out of his opportunities because, like you said, Dallin Hayden transfers. T.C. Caffey goes down with a season-ending injury. So it's like, what became from him being, the fifth guy, sixth guy, he's now the third guy. So now he's getting all that extra experience in the backfield early in these mop-up duties, like you said. But I think he's definitely making the most out of his carries, and he does run hard, man. He's been a nice surprise, I think. To be honest, I don't know if there's as much hype around the country about him, like coming into camp and stuff. I feel like he kind of went under the radar a little bit in that instance, but overall, he's been a good surprise.
Yeah, I love his burst getting through the hole. Like he's got a really electric feel when he touches the football that I wasn't really expecting. And when he made his first appearance in the Akron game and he got the ball, I was like, who is that? Like it like immediately popped off the screen with his burst and his elusiveness. I was just like, it did look like a J.K. Dobbins type of runner. So, very excited to see where this season goes, because I know we have Henderson and Judkins, but there's going to be times where they need spelled. And with how much they're going to be used this year, we're going to have a third back. And I think he can – they said that every back in that room can play on all three downs, and which is huge. And so if you need to give – Judkins and Henderson break and put Peoples in, I don't think they're afraid to do that with how explosive and how much he can bring to the offense.
Oh yeah, definitely not. I mean, I'm a huge James Peoples fan. I see the similarities between him and J.K. Dobbins. It would not surprise me at all if he is the starting running back next year. It also wouldn't surprise me if they bring in a transfer, just given how young that room will be next year. So really curious to see what they do with him moving forward. I do agree with you. I think he could get some reps with the ones, especially the more we move into this year. Again, just keeping Quinshon and Travion even more fresh. Nothing wrong with that if you got three guys. Finally, the last guy to talk about. We talked about him ad nauseum, but the question I proposed to you, Ryan Williams from Alabama, is fantastic. Only 17 years old. Ohio State is Jeremiah Smith. Is Jeremiah Smith the best freshman in college football? Now, we might be biased, but I'll admit, it was my first time watching Ryan Williams on Saturday. And the fact that kid is 17 years reclassified and is 17 years old, it's an interesting conversation because both are just absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what these kids are taking these days that make them just these robots that are just dominating nonstop at that age, but it's just incredible. It really is.
I think the big difference between I know they're a year apart, obviously, and I think just the physical attributes of Jeremiah Smith alone, kind of put him above in my book. Ryan Williams kind of is like a Devonta Smith type guy. He's not very big. He's not very he's not like a jack dude. He's just kind of lanky, and watching him run routes against Wisconsin, he makes it look so easy. The way he comes off the line of scrimmage, he is almost super nonchalant about it, but he just seems to be open. So I mean, and only being 17, it's pretty incredible, But obviously, we're going to be biased over here and say JJ is the best freshman receiver in the country, right? But I mean, he's definitely in the conversation, no doubt. I mean, it's definitely 1A, 1B type deal. They could be swapped around. It's not going to surprise people.
Gosh, I hate that we're doing this conversation so early in the season because I feel like once we get into I feel like once we get into the meat of the schedule and the conference play, we're really going to see for both guys what that ceiling is. But man, just like you were saying, Nick, with the physical attributes alone, you're hard pressed not to say Jeremiah Smith couldn't play in the NFL on Sundays, right now. Just with that size, you don't even see that on Sundays. But besides a DK Metcalf or just a bigger body guy, Mike Evans, those are the type. Julio Jones is the comp for Jeremiah Smith. And it's you see it immediately on the field. He's just better than everybody. And it's cool. I think I don't want to get too far ahead of too far ahead of it, but once we see him against Oregon and once we see him against Michigan's defense, which has a really good secondary, we'll have like a really good idea. And by that time, like he could be a front runner for the Heisman. And I mean, it's not out of the question for sure.
Yeah, there's a long way to go. But again, like when you're coming off a bye week, it's one of those things that it gives us something to talk about a little bit. But yeah, I need to see them more against. I will say Ryan Williams doing it against Wisconsin, pretty impressive. But yeah, Nick, I agree with you. It's a 1A, 1B situation. These are the two best freshmen in the country. And at this point, I haven't seen anyone that's close to them. And to me, I'm just personally more amazed from Ryan Williams only because when you reclassify, one, that's not easy to do. And this kid should be a senior in high school. And that's what's just amazing to me. But yeah, moving on, guys, we're going to give our picks for the week. First off, how did you guys do last week? I went 6-2. Purdue decided just to forfeit, apparently, once kickoff was done. And South Carolina decided to choke after being up the entire game. So that's why I'm 6-2.
South Carolina was dominating that football game. I was looking at the score. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then all of a sudden I see LSU won. I'm like, geez, what a talk about just a collapse on the football field.
Yeah, I ended
up
up
6-2.
Yeah, Nick got 6-2. You said you got 6-2, right, TJ?
Yep, correct.
I finished 5-3. South Carolina let me down. BC, they had a good game against Missouri. It just came down to the home team, I think. Ended up winning that one. And then Arizona lost to Kansas State.
Yeah.
Can I just put a plug in here, though?
Yeah.
Coming from a person that was at that Kentucky-Georgia game this weekend, talk about a brutal game, first off, to watch. Like, I mean, when all of Kentucky's points are, field goals, but it almost was enough to beat Georgia. Still, Mark Stoops, why are you punting on 4th and 8 on your own, like 49? Just doesn't make sense. You're going to give Georgia the ball back and they're going to win, so it's stupid. But Georgia is definitely – I think Kentucky kind of exposed some of their weaknesses. And I also think Georgia probably overlooked Kentucky a little bit too. But I think they definitely have some weakness. They really struggled against the run. And then Carson Beck didn't really impress me in person. But the Cats pulled it off.
You got to also think, like, how bad Kentucky got beat by South Carolina the week before.
Right.
And South Carolina, I mean, it looks like they're a pretty solid team.
They're pretty good.
But if you just compare the two games, like, Kentucky really came to play. And they did. They laid out a game plan to beating Georgia this year. And a better team might be able to take advantage of a lot of those weaknesses. So it was definitely the best game of the weekend for me.
Dude, Georgia's got to go to Texas, man. They got to go to Austin.
Man, that's gonna
be crazy.
That's gonna be a great game.
Yeah, they have to play Alabama, Texas. I mean, I don't see Georgia making it out of there, at least without 2 losses this year. But as we know, guys, it's a long way to go. Speaking of a long way to go, 2 teams are undefeated in the Big Ten. They play each other Friday night. Number 24 ranked Illinois at 22 Nebraska. Who you guys got?
I got Patrick Mahomes knockoff Dylan Raiola in Nebraska.
I do too. Nebraska all the way.
All right. Well, that makes 3 of us. So that means that Illinois will win, most likely. All right. Moving on. Let's see. We're not gonna pick Ohio State and Marshall now because we will be doing that Saturday morning for our game day preview. One of the big 12 o'clock games, though, even though it's kind of lost some of its luster because NC State has really struggled so far this year. NC State travels to Death Valley to take on number 21 ranked Clemson. Who you guys got?
Oh,
this is an interesting one.
I think Clemson gets it done.
Tough place to play for NC State. Yeah, I think Clemson gets it done also.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think also with NC State not having Grayson McCall It's a big loss. They are down to their backup quarterback, CJ Bailey. We'll see what happens there. But, yeah, I think Clemson, again, they're coming off a bye week, so they're going to be fresh for this game. Yeah, I got the Tigers, even though I can't stand Clemson. All right, moving on. Let's see. 3:30 at the Big House. Michigan has announced that Alex Orji will be taking over at quarterback. Number 11 USC experiences Big Ten football for the first time. Who do you guys got?
Give me the
SC.
Trojans, baby. Yep.
SC.
I was like, give me the Trojans, dude. That defense is very much improved. Orgy's first start, like, I don't know, man. I think Michigan definitely is going to come out and try to ground and pound, obviously, because I think they figure out, like, okay, what do we do really well? We can run the football decent, so they can't throw. Makes them kind of one-dimensional. But, yeah, I'm taking SC.
We got to agree on everything. Jeez. I got USC as well. This might be very anticlimactic if we all pick.
Or we'll all be wrong and we'll go together. So
yeah, we'll all go over. That would actually be kind of hilarious. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be a big game for sure. Definitely looking forward to that one. We move on to 4:00. One of the few 4:00 start times this weekend. Number 12 Utah at number 14 Oklahoma State. A battle of two quarterbacks that probably should just get a job at McDonald's at this point.
They are a couple of old men.
Literally.
Give me OK State.
I'm going to go Cam Rising in Utah.
I got Oklahoma State as well. Ollie Gordon, man.
He's a stud.
I think having the top – well, you know what? I can't say that because I don't know if he is the best. Okay. According to College Football 25, he's the best running back in the country. So apparently if you have that, it's pretty helpful. I will say Alex Bowman really balled out last game for Oklahoma State, but Cam Rising coming off an injury, is he fully healthy? Is he not? I think that's something to watch. And I think Oklahoma State just being at home, they end up pulling away there. Again, the spread's only -2 for Utah. So, yeah, we know that's going to be a close game. All right. Let's see. Who else we got? 7:30 in Norman. Welcome to the SEC, Oklahoma, as they take on number 6 Tennessee.
Ooh. Someone say it.
I got Tennessee. Nick, you sound like a robot, my friend.
Just throw it in. I'm going to take Oklahoma in that game.
Okay.
We lost Nick.
We'll get Nick back when he. We'll get him. Dude, you're like. Okay. All right.
We've never had Nick have connection issues.
No, this is actually the first, and he's gone. This is the first time that that's happened, actually. But I do with Tennessee, I don't know, man. Nico, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name, but Nico at quarterback is what does it for me. I think that kid's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I think if Tennessee can continue what they're doing, he will be a Heisman candidate. To me, he's just that good. I think Oklahoma's struggled this year. They did struggle with Houston at home. I know that was 2 weeks ago, but I don't know. It's a new test. You're going into a new conference. Having their first game at home, though, is a big deal.
Yeah,
So,
I'm only taking them because they're at home and playing that night game, that atmosphere. I think they're going to feed off that. I think it will be enough to get them over.
yeah. We'll move on. We'll get Nick's picks for these games here because it sounds like his Wi-Fi is out. So it said his Wi-Fi crashed out. So we'll see if he joins us back. But moving on here, here's a fun one. These teams are both not ranked, but I think this is going to be a pretty fun game. Michigan State travels to Boston College to take on the Fighting Bill O'Briens.
I like Boston College this year. I think they're tough. They just came off that big big close game against Missouri. Missouri's really good, and I just like what Bill O'Brien's doing over there. So I think I'm going to go with Boston College.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of there with you too. They could have beaten Missouri. They had a couple turnovers in that game that really hurt them. But there was a point in that game where if you were watching that game, you're like, okay, they have an opportunity to really win this game. So, you know what? I'm going with Boston College. 7:30 kickoff, Iowa at Minnesota. This is the NBC Saturday night game of the week.
Iowa at who'd you say?
At Minnesota. I am taking the Golden Gophers at home.
You know what? I'm actually going to go with Iowa in this game.
Okay.
I think Iowa's tougher than we expect.
Yeah.
I think they got a really good team. They're putting together some offense, which is unusual, but they're able to score it a little bit this year. They lost to Iowa State, but it was a pretty close game.
Game-winning field goal.
Yeah.
That's how they lost. I mean, but yeah, I do agree with you with Iowa. I do think they are improved. I'm curious to see that. I'm curious to see if they could sustain putting up offense. But so far, I mean, the returns have been good. The final game, JD, this one's interesting. 13th ranked Kansas State travels to BYU for a 10:30 kickoff against the Cougars.
I think I'm going to go with BYU in this game.
I am too. I'm telling you guys, BYU is not an easy place to play.
I've watched them play a few times this year, just on their late night kickoffs, and they got a solid squad.
Yeah, they do, and I think Kansas State is coming off that big win over Arizona. I think this could be an opportunity where they could slack a little bit. Again, Avery Johnson, he's gotten better as a passer for Kansas State, but you're going on the road now. And you're going on the road in the Big 12. And like I said, it is not an easy place to play, BYU. It isn't. I will say they go as Jake Retzlaff goes at BYU. So but again, that's similar to what Kansas State is with Avery Johnson, but having DJ Giddens, having Dylan Edwards, like there are some other weapons there. But this will be a fun game. I don't know if I'll stay up for the whole thing, but it'll definitely be a good game.
I'll put it on long.
That's a good call. That's probably what I'll do. As we're wrapping things up, man, anything else you want to add?
I wanted to talk about Heisman candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you got as your front runner right now?
Right now, it's hard for me to go with someone other than Jalen Milroe. I think, dude, Jalen Milroe to me, I watched him against Wisconsin, and the biggest thing that stood out to me, he's improving as a passer. And I'm telling people right now, if Jalen Milroe continues to progress as a passer under Kalen DeBoer, there's an opportunity not only for him to win the Heisman, but again, this is not a great quarterback class. He could be the first quarterback taken this year. It's that wide open. He's that type of athlete. And when you add that athletic ability to him and what he can do in the passing game, because, I mean, dude, he can chuck the ball down the field with anybody. Yeah, he struggles a little bit in the intermediate game, but you know what? I think that might grow as the season goes on. But right now, I got Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, I think the odds have him as the third highest behind Cam Ward and Jackson Dart.
Mm-hmm.
So it's there. It's there for the taking.
Yeah.
And Tennessee's quarterback's up there, Dylan Gabriel, Carson Beck, we'll see. And then Arch Manning is actually the seventh highest odds. He's actually higher than Quinn Ewers at the moment. So
premature. It's so premature. Oh my goodness. It is what it is. But this is all I'll say on Cam Ward. I'm not saying like he's not going to be a Heisman candidate at the end of the year, but I will say this. He struggled. He normally has these starts, not exactly this lights out. Normally in his career, he starts off good and tails off.
As the competition picks up, his play comes off. So.
And to be fair, Miami, I will say in his favor, Miami doesn't really play anybody like this year. Like, I mean,
yeah. I actually want to talk about one more thing, and then we'll hop off.
Yeah, for sure.
What is your opinion on what's happening at Florida State right now? Because this is a team that started top 10. They have lost their first 3 games of the year, and they have one of the highest NIL rosters in college football, highest paid. Do you think this is kind of a warning to college football teams on how to spend your NIL? Because a lot of this talk was centered around Ohio State at the beginning of the year before we played any games, because people were like, man, like, you spend all this money, like, you don't really know what you're getting. And we're kind of seeing that transpire with what's going on in Florida State right now.
Yeah, so somewhat similar to that, Ohio State, majority of theirs was spent keeping guys. So keeping guys that already been in the program. When you go out in the portal, know who is going to be the guy that truly is the best player at that position. So Florida State had an opportunity to get Cam Ward. They did not. Okay. They focused on DJ Uiagalelei. I probably mispronounced that. But anyway, that is what's ruining them right now. I don't believe it's anything else but the quarterback position, and that is the problem. They had the opportunity to bring in Cam Ward. They did. It was Miami, Florida State. There's rumors about Ohio State. I don't know about that. I'm not going to say one way or another. They made a mistake right there. And I think when you see his lack of success that he had at Clemson, that should have been the sign. Not what he did at Oregon State. Not what he did at Oregon State. That was a completely different conference. You need to look at what he did in the ACC, and it was not very good. That was their mistake, and here's where they're hurt, JD. You have a situation where you owe guys a certain amount of money now, regardless if you play them. So now it's tough. They're 0-3. Most likely it's going to continue as long as DJU is the quarterback. You have a 4-star in Brock Glenn. You have other guys on the roster that at this point, if you want to save your season, that's who you need to be playing. Florida State and these teams that go out and try and buy a team in the portal, that's where you're not succeeding. You can't do that. You gotta build your team with recruits. You got to build it with guys coming back. That's what Ohio State did. Ohio State brought in Caleb Downs, Will Howard, Quitshaw Junkins. Like, they brought in guys, but that was not where they spent the majority of their money. They spent the majority of their money bringing back Jack Sawyer, Denzel Burke, JT Tuimoloau. That's where this money got spent. So that's the difference for me. And that's why Florida State's hurt right now.
I think just to kind of go off of that, you're also looking at the quality of player that we brought in. You have Caleb Downs, arguably the best player in the portal. Judkins, arguably the best running back in the portal. And Will Howard, still up for debate who was the best quarterback in the portal. But for the type of offense we want to run, he's probably the best quarterback that we could have gotten. So, Cam Ward would have been great, Dylan Gabriel. But those guys are like, we see Dylan Gabriel struggling a little bit right now. And it's just, the retention piece is huge. So I think they did a really good job of supplementing what they already had, and they already had a great base to begin with. So, I think it's just an interesting thing that's going on in college football. And every time I turn on the TV and see Florida State getting killed, I just feel bad for that fan base, especially with how that season ended last year.
And another good example real quick, because it does tie – I think this is a part of a larger conversation we should have, especially this offseason, trying to see what teams brought in what, and then judge it that way. But Colorado's another prime example too. When you turn over your roster year by year with the portal, these are guys that have not played together. It has to gel. And some of these guys are coming in after the spring in some of these programs, and that makes this difficult. So with Ohio State next year, you're not going to see as much retention, because a quarter of our roster, maybe 40%, is going to the NFL draft because they're seniors. So that's the other thing to watch. We talked about it. You never want to fill the portal like with needs necessarily. You want to do it with depth. Ohio State's done a great job. We didn't need Caleb Downs. Technically, we didn't. We got him. We didn't need Quinshon Judkins by any means. We got him. At quarterback, did we need Will Howard? Most likely, but I mean, could you have rolled with Devin Brown? Some people believe you could have, and it wasn't necessary. So, yeah, that's what I got to say because, again, it'll be interesting to see what happens this year. We're a long way away, but their early returns are not good for some of those programs. Well, guys, appreciate everyone that joined us on this episode of the Scarlet and Gray podcast. Obviously, like I said, Nick had some Wi-Fi issues, so we will get his picks and make sure we have those recorded so we can recap with you guys next week. Tune in Saturday morning, 9 a.m. We will have your Ohio State game day preview for big noon kickoff against the Marshall Thundering Herd. We will talk to you guys. We will talk to you guys all again soon. As always, go Buckeyes, baby.